Greetings, YouTube. This is going to be a bit of a hot take. I find tiny homes fascinating. Not because I want to live in one, as you can see, I'm definitely not a minimalist. Um, no, I find them technically fascinating. I like to see how people solve problems. And it's kind of like looking at a model, something miniaturized and you have to look at it. How did that like there? How did they solve that issue? It's the same reason I read so many different kinds of rule books when it comes to RPGs. I want to see how they solve problems. How did you deal with this a little bit different than the way that person dealt with that? Did you come up with an elegant solution over there and this person came up with an elegant solution over there? You know, that kind of thing is cool. I really find that interesting. And I do follow a number of tiny home style channels here on YouTube just because I find the content fascinating. Um, and the ones that fascinate me the most are the ones that I consider to be functional homes. And a functional home to me means a fully functional permanent kitchen, a permanent functional bathroom that provides you with both the ability to have a functioning toilet of some variety. There's lots of varieties out there. I find the incinerator is kind of interesting. And a functioning shower. Okay? A permanent bed, not one you have to keep setting up and setting down. Um, these are things that I consider absolutely necessary to be considered a home. And of course, storage and hopefully like uh, some separation of spaces so that there can be multiple people, like two people in that space, and have some kind of sense of they're not in each other's face. You know what I mean? Even if it's not a particularly large space, you can arrange things so people can have a sense of their own environment right here, and they're not cheek to jowl with the people on board, if you know what I mean. Um, but one of the things that always bothers me is when I see people raising families in tiny homes, particularly mobile tiny homes, not just tiny homes that sit in one place. No, ones that involve buses and customized vehicles that go from point to point, and they're nomads because a child raised in that environment is not going to have the stability that they need. A child needs a sense of place. And when they're moving regularly, they don't have one. It's also a very useful tool for abusers to keep that child isolated. Now, you may think that's a really ugly take on things, and maybe it is, but it's also the truth. Isolating a child from any kind of community that could recognize that there's a problem in the family is a tool used by abusers and by narcissists to control their kids, to keep them isolated. That's one of the first steps of manipulating someone is isolate them from their friends and family. And if you've got them on a bus and you're moving them every week, that's a great way to isolate them. It's a great way to homeschool them so that they only hear about the worldview that you espouse and not be exposed to anything else, which is also terrifying. Now you're going to say, well, there are nomadic people throughout history, and you're right. But those nomadic people moved as a community. So yes, this 150 person unit may get up and go someplace else every 6 months. They may have a route they follow. So they have summer camps and winter camps and they're moving around, and that's absolutely acceptable. But they're moving as a unit. So that 150 people, barring births and deaths, is the same group of 150 people. So there is continuity. There is a sense of community. It's just a sense of community that accepts that there are times when it's smarter to live over there than it is to live over there, depending on the time of year. But if you're just on a bus going from point A to point E at willy-nilly, traveling hundreds of miles in a single day, there is no such community. You've isolated that kid from ever having a sense of connection to a true friend. How are they going to have a best friend outside that vehicle? How are they going to, have wacky adventures with their friend, even if they're, you know, just wacky adventures in the minds of the participants and they're absolutely vanilla and harmless and perfectly safe for their kid to be involved in? How are they going to plot schemes where they pull pranks on their friends because they don't have any friends, because they don't have time to make them. They are not set in a community. They're just being moved from place to place. So if you're an adult and you want to do that, have at it, man. Go for it. You can make that work. Fine. I got no problem with it. I may very well find your vehicle really, really damn cool. But don't raise kids that way. Kids need a sense of stability. They need to be part of a community. They need extra eyes on them and the people raising them for safety purposes. And even that doesn't work. Even that doesn't guarantee that a kid's not going to be safe from their own family. But it's a help. When I was an adult, I discovered that one of the teachers that had taught me as a kid had suspected that there was abuse going on in my family. But at the time, back in the 60s and the 70s, that wasn't something that you did anything about. But the fact that there was this professional, an educated, empathetic person right in front of me, telling me that they suspected that I had been being abused and they did nothing, was the first time I ever wanted to punch an adult right in the face. Really damn hard. I didn't. I was just aghast at what they told me. I just stood there like, and it's a lot easier to hide that kind of abuse if the kid's moving from place to place. My concern is with the kids. It's always with the kids. Adults can make decisions for themselves. Kids can't. When you control their environment to the extent that you'll move them every week, I find that very suspicious and just flatly terrifying. That kid is never going to have a normal upbringing. Maybe they'll get over it. Kids get over bad upbringings all the time. But they're probably going to need therapy at some point. It's probably going to have some effect on them that they wouldn't have had if they had a stable home that was in one spot and they were part of a community and able to go to school from kindergarten through high school with the same people, good or bad. A sense of continuity, consistency, which they'll never have. And they'll wonder for the rest of their life how their life would have been different if they had.